Okay, we went through chapter 10.7 for module 4, and but now we're actually going to get into some meat and potatoes with factoring. Let's first talk about GCF, or greatest common factor. Everybody always gets this confused because they think greatest means it has to be the biggest number or something bigger than the factors you're looking at. The problem is the word factor. Do you remember what the definition is for factor? These are the numbers multiplied to get a bigger number. So, like if I have 2 times 5, that equals 10. Well, these are the factors. Both the 5 and the 2 are factors. But are they as big as 10? No, they're smaller than 10. Okay? So, let's look at 24 and 18. Find the greatest common factor. Well, let's look at this. 24, I can say 1 times 24 and get 24. I can say 2 times 12 and get 24. I can say 3 times 8. I could also say 4 times 6. So my factors are, for 24, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24. So let's look at my factors for 18. 1 times 18 is 18. 2 times 9 is 18, and 3 times 6 is 18. So, our factors here are 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 18. Well, let's look at the list. I got 1 in common. I've got 2 in common. I've got 3 in common. 4 is not a common factor. 6 is, and I don't see a 9 or an 18. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and 6 that are common factors. But the biggest common factor, or the greatest common factor in this case, is 6. Well, how can I multiply and get 8? 8 is 1 times 8, or 2 times 4. And 9 is 1 times 9, and 3 times 3. Well, the only thing these two have in common is 1. Well, what about when I've got a bunch of x's running around? Well, x squared is xx, and x to the 4th is xx, x. So they've got 1 x in common. Actually, they've got 2 x's in common. So when you got variables with exponents, these are really nice and easy. You take the smallest number of them. So what happens if you put numbers and letters together? Well, 8 is 1 times 2, 1 times 8, or 2 times 4. 18 is 1 times 18. 2 times 9, or 3 times 6. So if I look in my list, 1, 2, 4, and 8. 1, 2, no 4 and no 8. So my GCF here is a 2 as far as my number. But now I've got to look at my x's. X squared, x to the 4th. So the smallest number is x squared. And now I got to look at my y's. Between y and y squared, the smallest number is just y. So, how do I expand that to actually factoring? Well, Factoring, remember, is undoing multiply. And I'll explain that in just a minute. Now, my greatest common factor of 14 and x and 21 is a 7. That's my GCF. Now, we're going to show a little bit of a sneak here. 14x divided by 7 leaves us a 2x. 21 divided by 7 leaves us a 3. Now, what we did was called factoring. The distributive property, watch this. And I can actually check my work by doing this. 7 times 2x is 14x, plus 7 times 3 is 21. Going this direction to here is called the distributive property. But when I undo this and get back to here, then it's called factoring. This here is called factoring. Whoops, I forgot to do something. That's supposed to be an exponent, and that's supposed to be an exponent. Sometimes it's kind of hard to catch all of those when you're typing it up. So with 3x cubed y minus 6xy squared plus 18xy, what is my GCF of 3, 6, and 18? If you said 3, you're absolutely right. Now x cubed, x to the first power, x to the first power would be your smallest number, which is just x. Y, y squared, and y, the smallest number is y. And I didn't quite leave myself enough space, but now we divide this by 3xy, then we divide that by 3xy, and we divide this by 3xy. 3 divided by 3, chop chop. 3 of these minus 1 of these leaves 2 of them. And 1 of them divided by 1 of them leaves none of them. 6 divided by 3 leaves us 2. X divided by x, chop chop. 2 y's on top divided by 1 y on the bottom leaves y. And then plus 18 divided by 3 leaves 6. And x divided by x, chop chop. Y divided by y, chop chop. And we're done with that one. And if you multiplied this back out, you could check and see if you did it correctly. Alright? Now we're going to take the distributive property just a step further. Instead of just a number, we've got an expression that's the same. So if I am going to factor out the GCF here, I look for what's alike, and that makes them happy, and it's going to spit that part out one time. And then whatever's left over goes into the second parenthesis. This is actually the last step of factoring by grouping, and we're going to get to there in just a moment. So at least you know part of how to factor by grouping. Now, there's something in my math lab that just really wrangles me because I hate the way it looks. It says factor negative a minus 1. Well, there is no a in this. Well, factor, and if I just kind of scribbled out the a, factor negative 1 from this polynomial. So, and this is how it should look in my math lab. What you do is you divide this by negative 1 and divide this by negative 1. 1 negative divided by negative, chop chop, and x divided by 1 is just x. And then positive 5 divided by negative 1, leaves a -5. See, they've already got the -1 out there, and they've got parentheses, and they've got a box. All you do is fill in the box with what's left once you divide the -1 out. I know that's really, really confusing, but it really is this easy once you understand what's going on. Now, factoring by grouping. Your steps, according to method 1, and I'm going to rewrite this problem. Factoring by grouping means you group sets of 2. Notice I left the sign in the middle of these open. I didn't underline it or anything. And what I do is I factor the GCF out of this set. Well, 4x and 16 has a GCF of 4. So when I divide this by 4, I get x, and when I divide this by 4, I get -4. Now, bring my plus down, and then I factor the GCF of this. My GCF here is y. So positive xy divided by y leaves x, and -4xy divided by y leaves -4. Now we're to our nice step. You find what's alike, that makes it happy. It spits it out one time, so x minus 4. And what's left is 4, and then plus y. And I have just factored by grouping. Now there is another method that I actually really prefer better. It's called the box method. And I want to tell you, box is your friend. Because when we get to number B, you're going to understand why box is your friend, because you don't have to worry about changing signs. You just use the signs that are given. So remember this, box is your friend. You draw a rectangle, and then you split that rectangle in half both directions. And then, well, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4 little boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. Just fill it in as you see it. So 4x in the first box. Notice I'm emphasizing my sign. Minus 16 in the second one. Plus, and again I'm emphasizing the sign, xy in the third one, and minus 4y in the last one. I don't care what sign the last one has. I don't really care what sign the first one has as long as it's positive. But notice, this sign is minus, I bring out a minus. This sign is plus, I bring out a plus. Now, your GCF going this direction, horizontally in row 1, your GCF is 4, and in row 2, horizontally, your GCF is y. Now, so we've done both horizontal directions, now we're going to go vertical. Going down in the first row, or first column, x is your GCF. And going down in the second column, 4 is your GCF. Hey, that looks exactly like this. X minus 4 and 4 plus y. See that? X minus 4 and 4 plus y. I love box. Box is your friend, I promise you. Now, number B, I'm just going to, on this paper right here, I'm going to, instead of rewriting it right now, I'm just going to do this real quick. Now, between 10 and 14, 2 is your GCF. Between x squared and x squared, x squared. Y, no y. So we're done with our GCF. So we divide this by 2x squared and 2x squared. Alright, so that leaves us 5y minus 7. Now this sign in the middle is a minus. So we're dividing by a negative number. And 25y and 35 have a 5 in common. So we divide this by negative 5 and we divide this by negative 5. Negative 25y divided by negative 5 leaves positive 5y. And positive 35 divided by negative 5 leaves negative 7. So here's our common factor, so it's happy, and it's going to spit it out first. And then what's left over, we put in the second parentheses. So 2x squared minus 5. Now, let me show you how much nicer this is using box. Draw a rectangle, split it in half both ways, and then just fill in 10x squared y minus 14x squared minus 25y and positive 35. Our let's bring our signs out. Both of these are minus. Okay? My GCF going this way is 2x squared. Don't just bring a number out. If they have a variable in common, bring that out as well. And my GCF this way is 5. Coming down is 5y. And coming down is 7. Hot dogs, here it is. 5y minus 7 and 2x squared minus 5. Had that dyslexic thing going on. I was about to say 5 and wrote it instead of my 2. So, I hope you understood this and enjoyed it, and I hope you better understand what a GCF is. If not, give us a holler.